Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I'm visiting with Steve Beaman. He is with the Society for the Advancement of Financial Education. Big events coming up in July. Plus, I'm sure we're going to have many more coming up after that. Really beginning to build momentum and looking forward to it. Talking about the news out there. The guy who developed Tesla. What's that guy's name?
I know the chairman is a guy named Elon Musk, which very interestingly, unlike normal car executives, this guy comes out of the aerospace industry. So
yeah, that's right. He and Richard Branson are both competing to create space travel, basically. Consumer-based space travel. And so here's my thoughts on this. I think you've probably heard this story. Of course, Hyundai has always been kind of a minor player in the automobile industry, at least here in the United States. And about 5 or 6 years ago, they shook up the automobile world by going from a 50 to 60,000 mile guarantee, which was common in the industry, to guaranteeing it for 100,000 miles. It was revolutionary. No one had done anything like that, and they doubled the length of time for maintenance. For ownership of the car in terms of coverage. That all of a sudden, almost overnight, made them a pretty major player in the automobile industry. I would have never looked at them seriously until they came out with that guarantee. And in fact, I think they're the 5th biggest car seller in the United States, which I found fascinating.
And I think, Kevin, people need to be aware of this as we extend the life expectancy of all of our manufactured goods, whether it's through companies like Hyundai or through General Motors or any of these companies. We're starting to see a longer life cycle to the automobile, which changes the dynamic of the industry, and it creates new opportunities for aftermarket players. It creates all kinds of investment chances for people and all kinds of ways for new manufacturing, new companies to exist, which is more of the reason you and I harp on the fact that we've got to get government regulation out of the way. We have to incent small and entrepreneurial companies to come back into the United States and build their companies here to create that kind of growth that we want.
So let me finish my thought because I want to get your thoughts on this. So, but even with that, and I agree, these cars are lasting longer. They're still the only ones who gave the 10-year guarantee. You go look at websites of any other of the automakers, and they're still usually within 5 or 6 years. They are still the only ones. But just recently, Tesla is arguing that you are going to make, I believe they say, 90% of the value of your car after 5 years is what they are now guarantee. I believe that's what they're guarantee, which is unbelievable. In terms of what they're saying, the retention value of the car. You think they're pulling a chapter out of Hyundai, or is that maybe too much hubris on Hyundai's part?
Well, I think it's a little hubris on Hyundai's part, but I think Tesla is trying to really go to people and say, yes, the initial sticker shock is real, but in terms of a longer-term investment, you'll recapture that investment. The problem they've got is those batteries just don't last that long. And in a country like the United States where we have extraordinary distances between traveled cities, I just don't think it's going to hit feasibility just quite yet. You might see some penetration in the smaller, or I should say the metropolitan areas like Chicago or Los Angeles, where people don't have the geographic distance to travel, but you're still a little bit away from that car hitting mainstream.
Yeah, interesting. So one story that we're not hearing a whole lot of, I'm sure you've kind of seen it fall off the radar screen, although to the best of my knowledge, the situation hasn't improved at all, is North Korea.
Well, indeed, you and I have spoken about this nutcase in North Korea, and he continues to rattle his sabers up there, although interestingly, he's kind of backed down a little bit. I mean, he's looking to save face in the situation where, as a very young upstart, his military, which has been ingrained there for 40 years, is testing his withers, so to speak. And so he has been a little bit more quiet lately, but I certainly don't think we can take our eyes off that situation, no differently than in Syria and the Mideast, where we've not really been putting a spotlight on those areas as well. And we now have, last week, the Israelis dropped a bomb in Syria, taking out some of the supply routes to Hamas and Hezbollah. So I think we need to be very cautious how we proceed and look to how that will impact us here at home.
Yeah, no question about it. Talking to Steve Beaman, he's with the Society for the Advancement of Financial Education, helping business owners and individuals on many different levels to have a larger voice when it comes to dealing with government, to have financial literacy when you've got over 70% of small business owners fearing that they are not financially literate enough. And we're helping on a lot of different, many of those different fronts. Of course, one of the biggest stories I've ever seen of all time when it comes to things like kidnapping stories is what transpired in Cleveland, Ohio last week.
Oh, Kevin, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that. And our heart goes out to the families in Cleveland who are impacted by this heinous act. It's a symbol, again, all through history we've had people who are devout or devoid of a spiritual foundation, and clearly these gentlemen were, if you can call them that. I'd rather refer to them as animals, I think, but clearly it's a blessing these girls were found, and I credit them with having the fortitude to try to be rescued. So often in situations like that, you get the Stockholm Syndrome where people just become captive to their captors. And so it's a blessing they were recovered, but I think it gives hope to millions of families, or I shouldn't say millions, but let's say thousands of families around the country who've experienced that kind of horror in their life, and just maybe their children can be found as well.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The guy who's guilty, not guilty yet, the accused is saying that he is, he called himself a monster.
I'd like to put him in a cell with that girl in Texas who just got convicted of killing her boyfriend. Wouldn't that would be their sentence? In fact, we give them a life sentence in a co-joining cell.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how much longer he'd be there.
And she said she wants to die, so what the heck?
Yeah.
It is a sign, Kevin, as you and I have talked so often. There's more to life than money. We think we want to start with money, helping empower people across this country to build a better and more prosperous life. But there's more to it than that. And we need to get the core of the fabric of our society as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Talking to Steve Beaman, Society for the Advancement of Financial Education. Some analysis coming up over at priceofbusiness.com and usdailyreview.com about what's going on with him coming here to the great state, particularly in the Houston area to get started. But we're going to be doing some interviews with leaders of Tea Party groups around the state as we paved the way for him to hit other cities here. Texas is a huge state, and this is a state that I think naturally mirrors our values at the Society for the Advancement of Financial Education, so we should have a big footprint here, don't you think?
I do indeed, and I'll be following on the president's new tour down there. I think he calls it his Jobs and Opportunity Tour. I'm thinking, who's this guy think he is? Elvis? The only difference being Elvis understood music. Obama doesn't understand the economy.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's true. It's more like the jobless and opportunistic tour is what I would call it. But
you can go out and have the best show in the world, but if you don't have content, people shouldn't come, and that's what he's got.
Yeah, he ain't got nothing. All right, so much for my English. All right, Steve Beaman, he's with the Society for the Advancement of Financial Education. You catch him here every Monday on The Price of Business. As we get closer, we'll be getting more information to you about his tour coming down here, getting the message of liberty and economic freedom right here in the great state of Texas. We call it the Lone Star State. Thanks for being with us, my friend.
Always my pleasure, and the blessings to all of you folks down in Texas.
You bet. Remember, you can also email me, info@usdailyreview.com with questions about this event. I'm Kevin Price. This is The Price of Business.